Don't worry about the language. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to Muzzy Buzz. For those of you that are new here, my name is Mort, and I am the host of Muzzy Buzz. Before we get into the video, just want to remind you guys, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that you're notified every time I go live or put out new content. Also, remember that I have launched a Patreon, so you can head over to patreon.com/muzzybuzz. And if you do enjoy the content or if you have benefited, make sure that you do become a member. There are a number of benefits in the different tiers, so make sure you head over there and check that out. So, getting right into this video, this is part 2 of my response to the video that Introverted Smiles put out. If you haven't seen part 1, make sure you go and do that now. I'll try to link it somewhere up top here. So let's go in to the video. Again, these are little snippets from his main video, because obviously I'm not going to play the whole video here, but kind of like what I did in part 1, but we're going to continue where I left off. So let's have a look at the next clip and see what he has to say about Mohammed Hijab.
What makes you so different than any other political group that uses Islam to his advantage?
Okay, so in this clip, he is making a reference, I believe, to extremists and like people that would use Islam for their own political benefit or personal gain. I don't think that's necessarily a fair comparison. Mohammed Hijab is simply responding to a barrage of attacks launched by individuals like David Wood and Sam Shimon and Apostate Prophet and etc., etc., etc. So it's in fact them that are using Islam for their own personal benefits. It's not like Mohammed Hijab woke up, or we woke up and said, oh, you know what, let's go find a bunch of non-Muslims to go in and attack and refute. No, these individuals have made a career out of attacking Islam and basically mocking the Muslims. And Mohammed Hijab is simply responding, as you mentioned earlier in, previously in the video, that you understand why somebody would be offended. You empathize with people that would want to take a course of retaliation. So I don't know why you're bringing this up. I mean, how is it a gain for Mohammed Hijab? How is he using Islam to do what? I don't understand that. So I think it's kind of just a moot point. I don't understand the point behind that, but let's continue on. Let's see what else you have to say.
I know Islam firsthand believes in an eye for an eye. Trust me, I used to be Salafi.
Okay, so he goes, hey, I know Islam believes it's an eye for an eye. Trust me, I used to be Salafi. Trust me only. Don't trust anybody else. I'm the Salafi. There's a problem with this statement. Islam believes an eye for an eye, but it also believes in a concept of forgiveness as well too. And an example of that would be, let's say we're talking about murder. The family of the victim who was murdered has the right to do an eye for an eye, for example, a murder for murder, but they also have the option to take diya, which is the blood money, right? So which is equal compensation, but not by taking a life. And likewise, Islam allows room for arbitration. And so the idea that it's always an eye for an eye and that it has to be, the exact same thing that you're doing back to them or is not necessarily the idea here. I don't know what part of Islam you studied, but even Salafis believe this. Like, there is room for arbitration between the oppressor and the victim, right? Between the criminal and the victim. But I don't know why you failed to mention that part, but maybe I can help you understand this concept a little bit further. But Anyways, let's continue on to see what else you have to say.
Actually, there's an Islamic concept about hating it with your heart, and if you cannot change it with your hands. Where right now, I think Mohammed Hijab is trying to change it with his hands when he doesn't have the capability. Because
Okay, so here he's trying to recall some of the Islamic concepts that he learned while being a Muslim. And the problem with this is that he doesn't actually quote it correctly. The hadith is that if you cannot correct it with your hands, then correct it with your tongue. And if you cannot correct it with your tongue, then know in your heart that it is wrong. And the problem was that he skipped the part about correcting it with your tongue. And he said either you have two options. Either it's going to be with the, in your heart or physically. And then he goes on to say that, well, Mohammed Hijab is having problems because he can't do it physically. Well, if you look at the actual hadith, it is actually, in line with what Mohammed Hijab is doing. He knows in his heart that it is wrong, and he is correcting it with his tongue. He is issuing a response, and he is challenging that. And he's done it many times. Maybe you don't agree with the level of aggression. Maybe you don't agree with his demeanor. That's all fine and dandy. You are free to disagree. But don't try to say that from an Islamic perspective that he only has two options. Either hate it in his heart or take physical action. He has a middle option, which is to correct it with his tongue. And that is what he is doing here. So I'm glad we were able to clarify that. Let's go on to the next clip.
This is one thing I struggled with in Islam. I was a strict Salafi Muslim, and there was this apostate that kept mocking Muhammad, kept mocking over and over. And this happened like 10 years ago, Ben. And there came a point where she became harassed and stalked by this older guy. And I put a stop to it. I said, stop it. Hey, don't do that to her. Even though she is like that, let her say her thing. Don't threaten her with physical violence, at the very least. You know what happened to me? I became the black sheep of the group. What, was I supposed to let them beat her up? No, I had to stop it, and I stayed Muslim. It's not like I apostatized from Islam after that.
Okay. So he gives a story about how he had to stop the violent extremist Muslims from taking action and beating up an ex-Muslim. Now look, I doubt the authenticity of this story, but for argument's sake, let's say that he, did in fact do this. There's no problem with that. Again, from an Islamic concept, you don't take action into your own hands. So I don't know what kind of Islam or what group you were hanging out with that felt that they had the right to take action by themselves against a person who is sinning or whatever. But that is not an Islamic concept. And I think most people with basic knowledge would understand that you don't go do vigilantism. Like you don't go out and, and essentially just take the matters into your own hand and be above the law. So if it is in fact that, that this was happening, you did the right thing by Islam. If you were a black sheep in that circle, that should have been a red flag to you to know that you're moving in the wrong circle, my friend. You were hanging out with the wrong people. And I think you also recently released a video about your last day as a Muslim or last video. And you were complaining about people that were being judgmental and making takfir or I think, mocking you or ridiculing you or coming down harsh on you. Don't you think it was time to probably think, hey, wait a minute. This can't be the right form of Islam. I'm reading all this stuff about Islam, but these guys are not lining up with what I'm reading. Don't you think it would have been a good idea to, to step back and realize, wait a minute, maybe I'm just in the wrong crowd? I don't know, just food for thought. So let's see what he has to say in the next clip.
So yeah, Muhammad, why and your buddies, why do you guys say, oh yeah, in Islamic State with the Emir, you guys would be killed? Is that dawah? Is that something wise to say to someone that leaves Islam?
Okay, so in this video clip, he is essentially saying, well, do you think it's wise to, tell an ex-Muslim that you're going to die and mention all the hudud and say if you go to the Islamic State, you would be, you would be killed or whatever. Do you think it's good da'wah? So to talk about this issue, it's a little bit deeper. I think you're conflating two things. First of all, he's not making da'wah to the apostate prophet or people like this. These people, first of all, are asking him a direct question in a very sly and sarcastic manner. And he's basically trying to say that Ali Dawah and Mohammed Hijab are, too cowardly to answer and they're embarrassed to answer about Islam. So he gave him a very serious answer. And he said, yes, the type of person that you are in an Islamic State, this would be the punishment. It's not that he's giving him dawah and saying, oh, all apostates have to be killed and so forth and so on. It's just that he is giving an example about this individual because he is the kind of individual that would be calling for people to rebel, to attack the faith, to condemn and mock Muslims. That kind of behavior, which if you look at Ali Dawah's video where he talks about this stuff, he says, listen, you know what? This is causing fasad and fitna. And, it is bad or essentially causing civil disobedience. So this is directed specifically toward a specific person that is asking a specific question in order to mock the Muslims, right? In order to try to make it sound like the Muslims are embarrassed of their understanding or of a law that we have a penal code. I think you're trying to conflate dawah with, treating an enemy and an open hostile enemy harshly and reminding him that, yes, we're not afraid of what our religion says. We're not afraid of speaking the truth about our religion. Because that is simply what the apostate prophet was implying, saying, well, have you went and asked him what he thinks about apostates and stuff and things like that? They want to kill me because in their state, if I was there, they would kill me. He's basically trying to create this scenario in which Ali Dawah and Mohammed Hijab are afraid or hiding the information because they don't want to, quote, expose Islam. So two different things here. But anyways, let's continue on to the next video.
What kind of example are you setting for the future generations that don't have the knowledge? These people don't have ilm. They don't have knowledge. And they're just following you. That's a big responsibility you have there. These young kids. Think about the young kids.
All right, so in this clip, he goes, these young kids are just following you, and you should be mindful of what you're doing and how you're influencing them. Now, look, there's no doubt that young people will follow what other people do, especially the ones they admire and look up to. And I have no problem with that. But repeatedly, Mohammed Hijab has said, no violence. Do not take individual action against them, right? The most he's done is told them to rally on Twitter, which is a war of words. You certainly shouldn't have a problem with that, right? If it's words are what we use to debate and discuss, and sometimes it gets ugly, right? And it's not only from the Muslim side. There are plenty, if not more, from the atheists and non-Muslims and other religions that are vile. I don't see any condemnation of that. And the problem is this, that you're not reversing the scenario. What kind of example are apostate prophets setting and for other young atheists who might be, more militantly inclined? Like I have a video on my channel where there are a bunch of Arab atheists talking about how they would like to kill Muslims and rid the world of Islam because it is the humane thing to do, right? So What about these kinds of people? Like, what about them? Why aren't you advising the apostate prophet to not be mindful of what he's saying because he may influence, overzealous young kids? Or why don't you make the same, advice to David Wood, who is, encouraging Christians to just bash and insult, and you can see the live stream, the comments about how they want to, the attitude towards Muslims, the bitterness, the divisiveness, the willingness to commit harm or to do anything to get rid of Muslims in Islam, right? Why don't you comment on that? Why is it always the focus on Muslims? I mean, are their children not important? Or is it only the Muslim kids that are important in this scenario? I'm sure you would certainly agree that all kids are important, right? So where's their condemnation? Where's your condemnation for them? I don't see it. Again, we see a double standard and the inconsistencies begin to come out. And it's not looking like a genuine Naseehah. It's not looking like you genuinely want to give him advice. It seems like you're picking apart something in order to, just talk about Mohammed Hijab. But anyways, let's continue on to the next clip.
Look at apostate prophet's wife, and let's just make all these sexual jokes. But you don't, target people that are not involved with it. Innocent bystanders. You could say, oh, well, she's married to him. That means she agrees with everything that he does. It's unjust.
So in this clip, again, I keep finding this to be a problematic issue because where is the condemnation for the other side that is doing it? They constantly make sexual references. They talk about, even apostate prophet today made a reference to how Muslim women, they just, they're eager to do certain things and Muslim men aren't charming. Like he makes references to sex lives of individuals and offends a whole group of people, but that's fine. I don't understand this logic. Like it's okay for them to be vulgar, to talk about disgusting things, to insinuate nasty things like Muslims are necrophiliacs or, they're involved in bestiality or even incest. And I mean, just to go out and to make these wild, outlandish claims against Muslims and use all type of sexual vulgarities. And that's perfectly fine. Why? I don't know. Maybe because you think they're just attacking Islam, so it's okay and it's not an individual. Well, here's a reminder. Islam comprises, of Muslims, and Muslims are a collection of numerous individuals. And so it is an attack on many individuals. It's not only one individual. So by this argument, it's actually worse what they're doing. But the other part of the problem is that apostate prophet's wife is not an innocent bystander. She openly critiques and she tweets and she attacks other Muslims and the honor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you're going to say, well, the apostate prophet's wife is a bystander, she's a woman, leave her alone, it's just another individual, that's messed up because it's his wife. Well, it's messed up because he loves his wife. He cherishes her. It's important to him, right? It's sacred to him. Likewise, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his honor is sacred to us. His character, he's dear to us. And you already know this. You mentioned it earlier on. So why don't you make the same connection here? I don't understand. I don't understand the double standard and why you're excusing the fact that she does this. Like you're excusing her. You're saying, hey, okay, you can attack every now and then, put tweets out, insult the prophet, but don't talk to her because she's the apostate prophet's wife. And if you do that, then that means you're stooping to new lows because, you can't attack them both for their merits. You have to let her go because it's his wife. No, it doesn't work that way. The minute they step onto the field and they begin talking about Islam and they throw themselves in the conversation and add their commentary, they become part of the coalition. They become part of the attack, and therefore, by extension, they are fair game in terms of refuting. So, I'm not really seeing the consistency in your arguments, and I think you should probably think them through. But that's just my take. I know I made this offer to you in part 1. If you're willing to come on the show, I'd be happy to have a discussion with you and talk about these points one by one and help you understand the Islamic perspective. I think you're lacking, that lens or that perspective, at least from the Muslim's view. And I can help you understand that. But it's up to you. You can reach out to me on YouTube or even on Twitter. My handles are all over. You can, reach me there. Or better yet, just become a Patreon member and you might even get my number. Shameless plug. But anyways, that's all I have for this video. If you guys liked it, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you are notified every time I put out new content. Make sure you head over to patreon.com and look at Muzzy Buzz and become a member. If you think the content I'm putting out is good and you benefited, consider becoming a member. So that's all we have for this video. I appreciate you guys all watching till the end. And until next time, let's talk about it. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Muzzy Buzz, Muzzy Buzz, Muzzy Buzz.